Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Resistance Bureau, where my colleagues and I shine a light on the struggles for freedom worldwide, the campaigns against government oppression, and the oft undercovered issues that we believe merit broader attention, particularly on the African continent. I'm joined today by two very special guests from South Africa to discuss the unprecedented attacks on free speech in the United States. In short, this will not be a comparative analysis, not so much about what South Africa can learn from itself, but rather what America is getting wrong and what we should be rethinking while being mindful of the dangerous path we are collectively treading. To unpack all of this and more, we have with us Angel Campey, a multi-award-winning comedian, radio presenter, and screenwriter. She is host of the very popular afternoon drive show on Smile FM, The Joy Ride with Angel Campey. I'm also joined by KG Mokgadi, a comedian, actor, and writer who is perhaps best known for his work as the host of Politically Aware, a satire news program that was recently awarded a South African Film and Television Award for Best Online Content. Thank you both so much for joining me today and for helping to inform our audience, especially my fellow Americans, on these critical and pressing issues. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. It's
Thank you for
exciting.
having us.
Excellent. Well, KG, let's cut right to the chase, why don't we? And talk about the recent cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel Live here in the US, which was, of course, reversed after a wave of public backlash. What does this say about the perilous state of free speech in America? And in your view, how urgently should Americans confront these encroachments? And what lessons can we take from countries like South Africa, for example, that have weathered similar storms in the past?
First of all, you have Africans discussing a problem of free speech in America. That tells you the big problem that we have, because normally it's the other way around, right? Normally it's America going, there's no free speech in Africa, there's no this, Africa is dictatorship, blah, blah, blah. So the fact that we are here should make Americans worry because we seeing we are seeing what is typically sort of like an African dictator approach to doing things happening in the States. It's I dare say the fall of the states. I mean free speech is your First Amendment, isn't it? So the first one out the block, that's the first one. I don't know how amendments work, but I know first is amendment number one. And
Most
number one
important.
is, bro,
I would think.
it means there was a couple of amendments, and then they went with this as the most important one. And it looks like it's you guys are at a very critical stage. You've passed. There was a time where we looked and we went, you guys are going in the wrong direction. And I think where I'm sitting, you are in Africa right now. Like that's what it looks like.
Mm.
And Americans have to stand up and fight this. You really have to. You have to stand up and fight this.
Well,
Everything
KG,
from, yeah.
like you're saying, I mean, when you say we saw them going in the wrong direction, it was when the White House started censoring which journalists were allowed in
Yeah.
to listen to the president addressing. And we went, oof, we've seen this script before. That's a slippery slope. And then you
Yeah.
came for the comedians, where it was just like, okay, well, that's the end of the road now.
Yeah.
Also, what we've learned is that when the government starts targeting comics, then there's no free speech anymore.
Hmm.
So whatever you guys have there is not, your First Amendment is basically gone.
I mean, like it's a famous saying, and I think John Oliver recently said it, where it was saying comedians are not the most important bastion of freedom of speech, but we are the canary in the coal mine. And when the
Yeah.
comedians start getting targeted, it even goes back to World War II. It was always the first people you shut up is the comedians. So the
The
Jimmy Kimmel
comedians.
incident is terrifying, and of course before that, Colbert. And it's been said from the White House that they're coming for the others, and how dare ABC put him back, even though, of course, the public backlash helped with that. It is a very terrifying thing to watch, as KG says, from Africa, where we said, "You guys are the freedom of speech people. What's supposed to be happening?"
Right.
if one last thing, it's also the president. It is also you gotta understand, like a president has got a lot of other things to deal with. But if the president is focused on comics, when does he get time to focus on healthcare, bro? Like, I'd understand if it was a minister. Like we have a minister situation here. It's not right, but I would go here. But the president?
Yeah, you're right. The president should be above this.
The president should be above this. The president should be sending people to handle these things. I don't even think the president should know that comics are criticizing him because he's too busy. And also, he's the president of America. There's a lot on America's plate right now.
Mhm.
The fact that the American president is busy dealing with comics is, you guys are the ghetto. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just for context, Jeff, our president in South Africa, the way that our freedom of speech is protected, as KG says, we have a nickname for him as a country. We call him Cupcake, and that is a derogatory nickname based on an affair that got leaked. And we call him Cupcake, and he responds to Cupcake positively. You can greet him as
Yeah.
Cupcake, and he goes, "Hello."
And he's
Because he's
because the
like, "What am I
president
going to
has
fight you for?"
because the president is supposed to be above that.
Right, right.
Yeah. Your
So
president
that's an
is not
example.
above a little roast from comics. Guys, you've got a child running your country.
Well, if you remember, this reminds me to what really spawned the sense of urgency within our current president to run for the presidency in the first place. You'll remember he was sitting in the audience at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and
Yeah.
people were making fun of him, making jokes.
Yeah.
And you remember the camera panning to his face, and you could just see him boiling in this sense of rage, like building up inside of him, with, then President Obama up
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
mocking him. And that
Yeah.
really set us on the path we are on now. So it started with people poking fun at him and the inability to have any sense of self-deprecation or being able to take a joke. So
Yeah.
you're talking about this, it's reminding me of,
Yeah.
almost a decade ago where all this first really started.
It's like a villain origin story where he went,
Yes,
"I'm going to stop
exactly.
you, and I'm going to become president and stop you." And he's got there.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Well, just to follow up on some of the domestic happenings in South Africa, Angel, I wanted to ask you about an issue that really hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Certainly in South Africa it has, but it was the raid last month on the home of your fellow comedian,
Mhm.
Anton Taylor, who angered authorities after posting a satirical video about the Minister of Police, I believe. And as I understand it, prosecuting authorities ultimately decided to not pursue a criminal case. But has this had any chilling effect on free expression in the country? And how has this personally affected you in your work? And KG, I'd love your thoughts on this as well.
So, as you might know, KG and I work together at Politically Aware. I'm one of the writers with him. And so, look, the Anton Taylor thing, for context, he created a satirical video he's a social media content creator and a comedic actor. And he was sort of making a satire of what he'd gotten from the police minister and the bribery. And the police minister disliked it so much that he got the Hawks, which is the equivalent of, what's the American equivalent, KG?
FBI.
The FBI, the CIA, like he got the
No,
big
FBI.
government sting
Yeah,
people to come
FBI.
to his house unprovoked. He had no warning, and they confiscated his cell phone for a week or two to go see what was on his phone. And that is, as you would know from America, a gross infringement of freedom of speech, human rights, everything else. And then what was nice, and as KG alluded to earlier, it isn't from the top office. It's a minister. It's a person abusing their power to try and flex and scare a comedian. And Anton refused to be frightened and went to social media to tell what had happened. And it was on the back of that that all the other political opposition parties campaigned against what had happened. People, got it thrown out, and it almost fortified our resilience as satirists. There's actually an episode of Politically Aware coming up with Anton Taylor contributing it because everybody went, "Oh, let's talk to you." I'm actually going to have him on my radio show coming up soon too. And people are talking about it even more. So it is that the same thing I think happened with Jimmy Kimmel, where it's like the Barbara Streisand effect, I think you also call it, where you
Yeah.
try and not talk about something, and because you've tried to shut it down, people giving it so, so much more
Has,
attention.
has a
So
galvanizing effect. Yeah.
yeah, so it was chilling, but I think South Africans have a slightly a different response. We've got a much more chaotic political climate. We've got a lot more parties, a lot more noise in parliament. It's not like one voice with a blue and a red. We've got multicolors of parties. So it did just sort of create a conversation, I would say personally. But that being said, terrifying for Anton, and I'm very happy KG is the face of politically aware, not me, because if we upset the government, they're coming for him.
AG, since the name has been invoked here, I feel like I have to ask you what your response is to all of this.
So what we need to take in account is how the comedy gods literally smiled at Anton and showed him love. What his character did by accident is touch a nerve of an issue that was being investigated. And as a not as a result of Anton, but the investigation is at a point where we're sitting with a commission of inquiry to find out the extent of which criminals or gangsters or the mafia has control over the government. So when Anton put that out to the Minister of Police, it looked like Anton has got information on him because he mentioned one or two people that are involved. It's like when the comedy gods love you and you just stumble on a great gag. Anton stumbled on a great gag, and what it did is that it scared the minister into acting, right? I am not scared at all that such things will happen. A matter of fact, I look forward to it. We'll be famous.
I mean, look at Jimmy Kimmel's views. He got to
We will
6.7
get
million in
we
his
will
first
get
debut.
Jimmy Kimmel's views. We'll shut it down. As Angel say, this was a huge win for South African satire and the majority of the South African government itself. This is not coming from the president. This is not coming from. It's the Minister of Police literally being uncomfortable that you know
Being
uh,
exposed.
he's being exposed, and it has happened with politically aware at one point that we made an episode about the Department of Minerals and Energy. It was a fake ad from them. We tagged them, and then they refuted it as fake news, blah blah blah. So
Of
there
course, it's
there
fake
is
news.
and
Yeah.
made it go viral. So there is an
It got
element
picked up
of
by Al Jazeera because the national
bro,
government
you
shared
know
our
what I
video
mean?
saying this is fake.
That's great.
Yeah. So there is a bit of an element of where you're going. The people running us, bless their souls, they don't know how the internet works yet.
It's an older generation.
Yes, the older
Yeah, so
generation.
like yeah, we're run by uncles and aunties, and sometimes they don't know how the internet works, and they keep making these blunders that make us go viral and help put food on our plates. I think that's what happened to Anton. It doesn't scare me in the least bit. I celebrate it, and the fact that South Africans came in and sort of like ring-fenced Anton to protect him is amazing to watch. Yeah,
And it's testament to the way the American people did the same with Jimmy Kimmel. And I think most importantly, even red-leaning people who don't agree with what he says, they need
yeah,
to understand that
yeah,
they must agree with his right to
yeah,
say what he says. And
yeah.
it's so important to have the debate. And what is more frightening in the American context is it did come from top level. And here in South Africa, our president, if he got bothered with it, would have condemned it. And we feel safe in our freedom of
Yeah,
speech that that is still
yeah.
true and our constitution is upheld from that. We do treat our constitution much like you guys do as, the infallible law. but ours is much younger because, of course, we only got ours in 1994. So it's a much freer, much more modernized constitution that allows for the people to have a lot more agency.
Right. And actually, along those lines, taking a look back and maybe expanding the scope a bit, I would like if you could to share your thoughts on I think what you both have already referenced, and that is the enduring power of humor in the struggle for human rights. So South Africa obviously has a rich experience here, looking back to the apartheid era, for instance. How did South African artists then manage to challenge authority and foster social change while still connecting through laughter? And how does that through line impact your work today? I'd love your thoughts on that.
KG, do you want to go first? KG and I are the same age group. We've come up together as comedians for 15 years. We're very close friends. We have a similar opinion on this, but I'll let KG take the lead.
Thank you, my guy. I think humor has been important. There's been in any place where you've got a lot of pain, you have a lot of funny people that help the main society deal with whatever's going on. I think humor was important post-apartheid to get South Africans to unite, right? We all started with the normal racial stereotypes, but those jokes were, in my opinion, this was way before my time, they were there to make us comfortable around each other. I think pre-apartheid, humor was used by satirists, cartoonists, and people who played characters on stage to criticize the government.
Peter Dirk
Remember that
8.
part of yeah, Peter Durkheim's Evita Bezuidenhout. I think not Gucci, I think I even know that the apartheid government wanted nothing to do with humor. They silenced everybody. Casper de Vries is another one, right? Also, some of these people that we're naming are Afrikaans and white, and you would say from the other side of the
Yeah, they're
struggle.
coming from within the apartheid regime, and that's the
Yeah.
important
So
ones to
from
speak out.
within the apartheid community,
Mhm.
exposing their government and challenging their government, and they were superstars, and they still are. They still are because of that. So humor plays a huge, huge role. Even today, we still need humor to deal with whatever is
Mm.
going on, from government corruption to inability to do work in general. That's, I think, the thing that is getting through most of it is humor.
And I think to elaborate on your point, KG, like the people you're speaking of, Peter Dirk Ace had to become so obscure that because government was so dangerous pre-94, we had the level of censorship and non-freedom of speech that we are worrying for America now. And we had one TV channel, one radio channel. They would scratch vinyl records with songs that
Yeah.
were maybe about resistance and uprising. They didn't want the people to ever learn about unification. They made white people afraid of black people and black people afraid of white people. It was just constant. And Peter Dirk Ace had to dress up as a woman to play a drag queen, to be so obscure that the government thought it was something silly and ridiculous. And then he used that platform to say political activist movements. And he has letters from Nelson Mandela in prison saying, the latest reviews of your show are absolutely atrocious, which means it must be brilliant. Because it was the constant backlash of the government trying to pan and destroy these satirists, saying, never watch it, drivel. But the people were resonating, as KG says, with that vibration. And it wasn't that there wasn't a constant attempt to crush it, but they didn't stop. And that's, I think, what's very important.
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting when you talk about the apartheid era and how the media space in general is so constricted. But here we are in the US living in, what many consider for a long time to be a vibrant democracy with a vibrant media landscape. But if you look at that landscape now, there's upwards of 90% of the media space in this country is owned by five conglomerates,
Mm.
which is has helped sort of lead to a lot of the encroachments and restrictions on free speech that we've been seeing. So that, that's obviously something we should be paying better attention to here and certainly worried about. Um, but before you both leave today's discussion, I wanted to ask both of you just to sort of wrap up. What advice would you give to artists and advocates in South Africa, here in the US and beyond, who hope to use their creativity to defend free expression and build these sort of resilient communities that you both have referenced? And more broadly, what responsibility do we all carry, really, as storytellers and even as just simple concerned citizens to ensure that the freedom to laugh, the freedom to critique and imagine is preserved for our future generations? I'd love both of your thoughts on that.
Okay. Who should go first?
Angel, you can take the lead with this
I'll go
one.
first this time. I'll say that the first thing that I always like to say in the current climate is that when woke culture, quote unquote, was getting attacked, the more right-wing people like to say comedy's dead. We can't laugh at anything. But the irony is that it is that culture that is trying to make comedy be dead. And I think it comes from a very open-minded, very liberal place to continue to try and laugh at everything. Everything can be funny. It's important also to make fun of up. We don't punch down, then we're bullying. So we must always make fun of the government, make fun of the more powerful things, make fun of institutions. If we're making fun of people with disabilities or women or different races, we're punching down. So it's important to remember that the things that can be funny, where are we using our power? Because when you're making people laugh in a certain direction, you are bringing power and focus and agreement to that. And then, most importantly, I think to echo what KG said earlier, is not to be afraid. If you have a voice and you have an opinion, to not be afraid, because I think we see it time and time again, Jimmy Kimmel and here in South Africa with Anton Taylor, that the frightening backlash happens, but then that makes a noise and that brings a very positive wave in the other way. And it's sort of the tipping point right now where the powers are trying to frighten people to be quiet, and being quiet lets them win. And you can really just, if something scary happens, people will rally behind you.
Right. Yeah, it's so profound to hear you say, the responsibility that you have as artists and creatives to punch up and to not bully. And I'm thinking of our current president and administration where they are constantly punching down. And it's just reinforcing the fact that they simply just do not understand the climate in which we live, of course, but also the power of humor and of satire. And hearing you say that, Angel, it's just really making me think quite a bit
Yeah.
about that. So KG, over to you. No pressure. Last words.
Well, simply that what we do is very important. What we do is necessary, and when we stop a crucial part of society. There comes a time where society looks at artists to go speak, and that's the job, right? The job of the artist is to go and speak on behalf of people, right? And in a world where people cannot trust politicians anymore, we are the last ones that they can trust. So this is the job, this is the gig, and we can't stop doing it. And even when we try stopping, it doesn't feel good. It feels difficult. We don't feel like we're alive. So live, make art truthfully, with integrity. You're doing the right thing. Keep doing it.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for your insights today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope we can have more of these going forward. And certainly, thank you for taking the time to be with me here today. I know, KG, you mentioned you just got off a plane and you're home for the first time in a week, so really appreciate you. Angel, appreciate you just as much. And I can speak on behalf of my entire team at the Resistance Bureau to say that we really appreciate the work that you're doing, the important work that you're doing for South Africa and beyond. And in the meantime, we hope that you both take good care, keep fighting the good fight for free speech and human freedom, and of course, as always, against boring content. So be well, and we'll certainly be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
you
And
very
can we
much.
just say good luck, America, and keep the good fight going? We're
Thanks.
all watching.
We need it. We need
Thank you
solidarity
for the
now more
content, America.
than Thanks, guys.
Oh,
Doing great.
thank you so much, Jeffrey. Have a
Uh,
lovely day.
you too.